Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something that might just make your hair stand on end. A real Victorian mummy unwrapping party. Imagine stepping into a dimly lit drawing room, heavy velvet curtains blocking out the gaslights of the London streets. The air is thick with the scent of old books, candles dripping wax like tears, and the soft creak of polished wooden floors beneath your feet. You're here, an invited guest at a gathering where the main attraction is, well, a dead body from ancient Egypt. You sure you're up for this? You might not survive the evening. No, really, Victorian high society might just eat you alive with their polite smiles and polite secrets. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from tonight. What's the time and where are you listening? Drop it in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first cautious steps into the drawing room, careful not to scuff the expensive carpet with your shoes, which, let's be honest, probably cost more than your rent. You can practically feel the weight of centuries pressing down on your shoulders, even though the hosts are all giggles and polite clinking of glasses. A few men sport moustaches waxed so stiff they could double as fencing sabers, and the women's dresses rustle like autumn leaves in a cemetery. You can almost taste the anticipation in the air, mixed with a whiff of mothballs and old perfume. A servant with a tray of sherry weaves between the guests, offering a bracing sip before the main event. How you hesitate? Should you accept? The host, a robust gentleman with a belly like a banker's vault, claps his hands and announces the evening's highlight, the unwrapping of a genuine Egyptian mummy, imported with all the dignity of a sideshow exhibit. He grins as though he's about to reveal a prize at a fairground. The crowd leans forward, a sea of monocles and beady eyes. You spot the mummy laid out on a table at the center of the room, its ancient wrappings yellowed with time, the linen still dusty with sand from the Nile. It looks small, somehow smaller than the grandeur the host's booming voice promised. A few guests titter nervously, perhaps wondering if they're about to witness a sacred ceremony or a party trick. You catch the flicker of doubt in someone's eye and feel a pang of something you can't quite name, guilt maybe, or just the thrill of being part of something forbidden. A hush falls as the host picks up a small, ornate knife, more letter, opener than scalpel, and brandishes it with all the reverence of a man about to slice a Christmas ham. The anticipation feels electric. You can't help but wonder if the mummy's eyes, hidden beneath layers of linen, might still watch from somewhere beyond the veil, or maybe that's just the candlelight playing tricks. Either way, your pulse picks up. The host begins to cut, drawing the blade along the brittle linen, and a faint, dry sigh escapes from the ancient bundle, as if the dead have been holding their breath for centuries and finally let it go. A woman next to you gasps, pressing a gloved hand to her mouth. Her perfume is so strong it almost covers the mummy's own peculiar scent, a mix of old spices, resin, and something like dry rot. Your nose wrinkles, and you think of the time. You forgot a sandwich in your backpack for a week. The first few layers come away easily, revealing hints of golden amulets tucked here and there, glimmers of ancient wealth that once adorned a living body. You remember reading somewhere, probably while scrolling on your phone at 3 a.m., that Victorians believed these trinkets might carry curses. The idea makes you grin. What would they do? Haunt your TikTok feed. A hush deeper than any you've felt settles over the room, and you hear the crackle of the fireplace like bones snapping. Someone clears their throat, and it sounds like a cough in a tomb. The host pauses, lifting the linen slowly now, and you can almost sense the story unfolding. Thousands of years of history unspooling like a reel of film. And yet in the hush you wonder, is this respect or is it spectacle? A question that historians still debate and perhaps always will. Your fingers tingle as if you too are connected to this ancient tale. The smell grows stronger, a dry, sour odor that clings to your clothes. You glance at the faces around you, eager, anxious, curious, and you realize this is the Victorian version of your favorite unboxing video, except the box is a coffin and the prize is a human life. Not exactly the kind of clickbait you'd expect, but here you are standing among the crowd, drawn by the same morbid fascination that pulled so many before you. You watch as the last of the outer linen slides away, revealing skin that looks like parchment, dry and cracked. Someone in the back mutters about black magic, and another guest snorts that it's just science, a reminder that even now people can't agree on what this is, a scientific study or a desecration of the dead. And in that moment you realize, you're part of this too, a modern observer wrapped in the same layers of curiosity, judgment and uneasy laughter. The room grows still, the host clears his throat, and you wonder what secrets lie beneath the next fold of linen. You lean forward, and the journey continues. You lean in closer, the guests pressing against you like damp laundry on a clothesline, as the host peels away another layer of linen from the mummy's fragile form. The air thickens with the scent of ancient resins, sticky and sweet, like the inside of a forgotten jewelry box. You can almost taste the centuries on your tongue, a dusty blend of sand and time. The host's voice cracks with the thrill of discovery, his hands trembling slightly, as if he's unwrapping a birthday gift rather than the remains of a long-dead pharaoh. As the linen falls away, you catch sight of a withered arm, the skin shriveled, like autumn leaves pressed between the pages of an old book. It's a stark reminder that this was once a living, breathing person, someone who probably worried about taxes and in-laws, and maybe even had a favorite song. But here in this parlor filled with candle smoke and curious eyes, they're reduced to a curiosity, a relic to be dissected by eager Victorians who've never set foot in Egypt. The host gestures grandly with his knife, somehow both theatrical and ridiculous, and proclaims that the next layer might reveal amulets or even the heart scarab, the supposed seat of the soul. You can almost see the greed in the crowd's eyes, a glint of treasure hunting, a thirst for the exotic. You wonder if they'd be this excited to peel back the secrets of a neighbor's closet. Probably not. But here, tonight, everyone's inner archaeologist has come out to play. A lady in a sky blue silk dress leans in too, her gloved hands clutching her fan like a weapon. She's muttering something about curses. She's read, she insists, that those who disturb the dead might find themselves plagued by sleepless nights, broken mirrors, or worse. She glances at you, eyes wide, as if expecting a ghost to reach out from the wrappings and take her by the throat. You offer a polite, if slightly forced smile. The only curses you're worried about are the ones your landlord might hurl if you're late with the rent. The host carefully lifts a piece of linen, revealing a small, delicately carved amulet resting on the mummy's chest. A falcon, wings, spread wide, eyes like pinpricks of ancient power. A collective gasp rises from the crowd, and you feel a shiver run down your spine. It's beautiful in a way that no modern replica could ever be, weighty with history, heavy with secrets. You wonder who placed it there, a grieving spouse, a faithful servant, or maybe a pharaoh's priest who believed this charm would help. The dead navigate the perils of the afterlife. Historians still argue about who exactly performed these rituals and why certain amulets ended up in certain places. The host boasts that this amulet alone could fetch a small fortune at auction, enough to buy a country estate or at least a few seasons' worth of opera tickets. A man near the fireplace, his top hat perched at a jaunty angle, lets out a low whistle. "That's a ticket to the afterlife right there," he says, and you can't help but roll your eyes. Everyone's a comedian, even at a funeral. The host continues to unwrap the layers, each piece of linen falling away like a secret. You notice the pattern. Each time the host reveals another artifact, a small ring, a faded bead necklace, the crowd leans in closer, hungry for more. It's like the Victorian version of binge-watching a streaming series, each episode more shocking than the last. You almost expect someone to start taking notes for their own party, and yet beneath the spectacle, there's a discomfort that sticks to your ribs like cold pudding. You imagine the person beneath the bandages, their life reduced to a pile of bones and trinkets for the amusement of strangers. You wonder if they'd approve of this, or if they'd be horrified. The host doesn't seem to care. He's too busy playing master of ceremonies, his voice rising and falling with practiced drama. You catch a snatch of conversation behind you, a young man in a checkered waistcoat, insisting that the mummy was probably a priest of Amun, while his companion, scoffs that it's more likely a thief or a servant. The debate is oddly comforting, like a familiar song playing in the background. Historians still can't agree on how to identify these ancient souls. Sometimes even the best guesses turn out to be wrong. The host now lifts another section of linen, and a thin, papery scrap of skin peeks through. The smell grows stronger, like old libraries and something less pleasant. You wrinkle your nose, wishing you'd thought to bring one of those fancy perfumed handkerchiefs. Too late now. You're here for the long haul. A hush falls again as the host pauses, his face serious. He claims this is the moment of truth when the identity of the mummy might be revealed. He leans in, the candlelight making shadows dance across the walls like restless spirits. You can almost hear the ancient heartbeats, can almost see the dusty Nile stretching away in the darkness. You shift your weight from foot to foot, your knees a little stiff. The mummy's face is still hidden, and you find yourself holding your breath as if you might actually meet their eyes across the centuries. The host clears his throat, and with a flick of his wrist, he begins to reveal the next secret of the past. The host's knife glides along the mummy's linen like a maestro's baton, and you lean in, the murmur of the crowd fading into a hush so deep you could almost hear the embers in the fireplace crackle. The host pauses for dramatic effect. He's perfected this act, the practiced showman, and then begins his monologue about how these unwrapping parties became the toast of Victorian society. You catch a whiff of pipe smoke from somewhere nearby, mingling with the resinous tang of ancient embalmers' secrets, and wonder if the host rehearsed this speech in the mirror before the guests arrived. He clears his throat theatrically, his voice taking on the polished tone of a man who's told this story too many times, but never tires of the applause. "You see?" he proclaims, gesturing at the linened form like a magician about to reveal a rabbit from a hat. The British Museum opened its grand Egyptian hall, and suddenly every gentleman, and I do mean every gentleman worth his salt, wanted to have a piece of Egypt in his drawing room. His words roll out like a polished sales pitch, each syllable dipped in varnish. You catch a glimpse of a man near the window, his eyes alight with the thrill of ownership, as if the past were a prize to be collected rather than a story to be honored. He fingers a small gilded scarab nestled in his palm, and you imagine him displaying it proudly on his mantelpiece, a trophy of conquest. You wonder if he even knows or cares that this trinket once guarded someone's heart for the journey. Into the afterlife, Victorians loved their souvenirs, didn't they? Even the dead were fair game. The host goes on about how in the grand parlours of London, these unwrapping parties were the height of fashion, a spectacle that combined education with a frisson of the macabre, the perfect after-dinner entertainment. You picture yourself in that world, balancing a glass of sherry while trying not to get mummy dust on your dress. It's a weirdly modern problem, like trying to hold your phone steady while filming a TikTok in a crowded subway. Some things never change. The host's voice grows more animated as he describes the gentleman scholars who, between sipping brandy and comparing waistcoat patterns, argued over hieroglyphs and recited lines from the Book of the Dead as if it were a bedtime story. You feel the thrill of those gatherings, the sense of discovery, the competitive edge, the unspoken race to see who could claim the most obscure knowledge. Some men saw themselves as modern pharaohs, unearthing secrets with the same gusto they applied to horse racing and stock portfolios. But you notice the host's lips curl in a faint smirk, as though even he can't deny the absurdity of it all. You hear him mutter something about scientific curiosity, though the gleam in his eyes suggests he's just as enthralled by the spectacle as the rest of them. The crowd leans in, eager to hear about the strangest finds. Like the time, one mummy had a garland of dried flowers around its neck, still fragrant after thousands of years, or the rumor that some embalmed bodies were ground into powder and sold as medicine. You'd think they'd at least label it, "May contain traces of ancient pharaoh" on the bottle. A hush descends as the host delicately lifts another strip of linen, revealing a patch of painted cartonnage, a fragment of bright color amid the faded bandages. The pigments glow in the candlelight, blues and golds that defy the centuries. A lady near you gasps, her fan fluttering like a frantic moth. "Exquisite," she whispers. You can't help but agree. It's breathtaking in its own way, a final flourish of identity, for a soul who probably never imagined their resting place would be a dinner party centerpiece. The host puffs out his chest, proud of his find, and launches into a lecture on how these mummies often held clues to the social status of the deceased. Some bore inscriptions of names and titles. Others were anonymous, their identities lost to time. And of course, the historians are still arguing about how reliable these clues are. Some insist the smallest amulet can reveal a life story, while others scoff that it's all just guesswork. You get the sense that even in death, the debate never ends. The room feels close now, the air thick with candle smoke and anticipation. You can almost feel the weight of the centuries pressing on your chest. The uneasy sense that you're not just unwrapping a body, but unspooling a life, a whole tapestry of triumphs and regrets, boiled down to this: a parlor trick for bored Victorians. You wonder if in 1,000 years, someone will be peeling back your story piece by piece in search of something to gawk at. The host's knife stills for a moment, and he looks around the room, eyes glinting. "This," he says dramatically, "is history. Ours to explore, ours to claim." The crowd leans in again, eager to believe they hold the keys to a secret no one else can touch. You swallow hard, the taste of old linen on your tongue. You want to look away, but you can't. The show must go on. You shift your stance, the creak of the wooden floorboards beneath your feet somehow louder than the murmurs of the onlookers. The host's knife trembles slightly in the candlelight, reflecting the glow like a magician's wand, each movement promising a new revelation. His voice dips low, conspiratorial, as he begins to recount a tale that he swears is true. About the time a party guest fainted dead away at the sight of a mummified hand, still curled in a final, silent gesture. You can't help but imagine the scene. A fashionable lady in a feathered bonnet, her fainting couch at the ready, overcome by the realization that the hand once stroked a loved one's cheek or pointed sternly at a servant. You smother a grin. The Victorians did love their melodrama, didn't they? You wonder if anyone's ever counted how many smelling salts were sold that season. The host goes on to describe how these mummy unwrapping parties often blurred the line between science and spectacle, between education and downright showmanship. Some gatherings, he says, were led by respected scholars, men in starched collars with degrees and reputations to maintain. Others were orchestrated by unscrupulous dealers and amateur Egyptologists who treated the mummies as carnival attractions, complete with ticketed admission and refreshments in the next room. You can practically see the cheap wine and tasteless finger sandwiches, the din of idle chatter, the polite applause whenever something grisly was revealed. Tonight, the host says with a dramatic pause, we are on the threshold of discovery. You sense the anticipation in the air, like the moment before a big reveal on a reality TV show. The candlelight flickers, painting the mummy's linen in shifting golds and shadows. You lean closer, your breath catching as he peels back another layer, and there it is. A small scarab amulet, carved from lapis lazuli, a deep, mysterious blue that looks like a piece of midnight sky. A lady in a rose-colored dress gasps, clutching, her pearls as though the scarab might leap from its resting place and scuttle across the floor. The host's grin widens. He knows he's hit the jackpot tonight. He rattles off a half-dozen possible interpretations, some scholarly, some suspiciously speculative. Perhaps this scarab was meant to guide the deceased through the underworld, or maybe it was a status symbol, proof of the mummy's high rank. Historians, he reminds the room with a flourish, still debate which purpose was more important. You marvel at the scarab's intricate craftsmanship, the tiny lines carved into its shell, the faint traces of gold leaf still clinging to its wings. It's incredible to think that this small object outlasted empires, wars, and entire dynasties, only to end up here, on a velvet pillow in a smoky drawing room. You can't help but wonder if the ancient artisan ever imagined his work would become a party trick for people who'd never even seen the Nile. The host continues his monologue, now weaving a story of the mummy powder craze, how for a time the crushed remains of the dead were sold as medicine, promised to cure. Everything from headaches to impotence. You shudder a little at the thought of that grim elixir, finding its way into polite society's teacups. Victorians did have a knack for mixing the morbid with the mundane, didn't they? You think back to the story of the garlanded mummy, flowers. That smelled sweet even after centuries, and wonder what that says about the way time treats us all. You catch a snippet of conversation behind you. Two gentlemen debating whether the mummy might have once been a priest or perhaps a royal scribe, given the quality of the amulet. The nose, one insists. Look at the nose, it's perfectly preserved. The other scoffs, pointing out that the shape of the nose could have been altered by the embalming process. Historians still argue about the accuracy of such conclusions. Some swear by facial features, others dismiss them as mere guesses. It's oddly comforting, knowing that even experts can't quite agree on the story. The host lifts the scarab reverently, holding it up to the candlelight like a priest presenting a holy relic. Imagine, he whispers, this small token traveling through centuries, through wars and tomb robbers' hands, only to find its way here. His voice drips with awe, but you sense the subtext. It's not just the wonder of history he's selling, but the thrill of possession. Everyone wants a piece of the past, and tonight you're all complicit. You lean in, the flicker of the candle catching the edge of the amulet's wing. You wonder who first placed it on the mummy's chest. Was it love, duty, or simply ritual? The air seems heavier now, the shadows pressing in. You can almost hear the faint beat of a drum in the distance, echoing from another time. The host clears his throat, preparing for the next layer. You realize you're holding your breath again. Each peel of linen is like unwrapping a secret. And though you know there's nothing left to change the past, you still feel the thrill of revelation, the sense that each fragment might bring you closer to a truth no one else has seen. And so, with the scarab safely set aside, the host leans forward, his blade poised. The room holds its breath as the story of the past prepares to slip free once more. You watch as the host's knife slices through the next layer of ancient linen, the soft tearing sound oddly soothing against the low murmur of the crowd. The atmosphere feels thick, as if the very air is steeped in history and candle smoke, mingling with the faint scent of beeswax from nearby candles. You lean in closer, the creak of your chair muffled by the hushed anticipation, and feel yourself pulled deeper into this strange Victorian ritual, one that blurs the line between solemn remembrance and guilty entertainment. The host's voice drops to a near whisper, as though sharing a secret with only you and the shadows. He describes how these unwrapping parties were, at times, less about scientific study and more about the thrill of spectacle. The same thrill that makes us binge true crime documentaries today or scroll through sensational headlines at midnight. It's the human fascination with the macabre, wrapped in velvet gloves and high society manners. You imagine the attendees, dressed in their finest frocks and waistcoats, faces lit by flickering candlelight, eyes wide with a cocktail of curiosity and unease. You can almost hear their polite gasps and stifled chuckles as the layers fall away, each revealing more of the mummy's story, or at least what the Victorians wanted to believe it was. One can't help but wonder if anyone ever stopped to ask, what would the person beneath think of this parade? The host pauses to point out an intricately painted amulet, shaped like the Eye of Horus, resting just above the mummy's chest. Its black and gold detail gleams eerily under the flickering light. Protection for the soul, the host explains, his tone half reverent, half sales pitch. You picture the artist who carved this piece, their hands steady and sure centuries, knowing that their work would outlast empires, but probably not parties like this. A sharp intake of breath from a nearby woman reminds you of the dual nature of these events. Part scholarly investigation, part voyeuristic entertainment. You wonder if any guests ever truly grappled with the ethics of their fascination. Was this reverence or just morbid curiosity dressed in finery? The host brushes aside such doubts with a knowing smile, eager to share the next morsel of history. You notice a gentleman across the room, flipping through a worn pamphlet on Egyptian burial customs, nodding solemnly as if the text lends the party a veneer of respectability. It's a comforting illusion, but you know better. Beneath the lace and cravats lies a hunger for the exotic and the forbidden. Like tourists gawking at a wildlife show, the guests hunger for glimpses into a world forever out of reach. The host gently lifts a piece of the mummy's wrappings to reveal a small painted portrait on papyrus, faded but still haunting. It's a ghostly visage of a man or woman, no one can be quite sure, eyes staring straight out as if challenging you to look deeper. You feel a chill, as if the gaze might follow you home. They say these portraits preserve the soul's essence, the host murmurs, but who knows? Maybe it's just art. Historians still debate the true purpose, balancing between faith and skepticism. Your eyes trace the intricate details of the portrait, imagining the life it once represented. A life full of hopes, dreams, perhaps even mundane worries about taxes or garden parties. This person lived, breathed, loved, and feared. And now, centuries later, their image is a centerpiece for this evening's entertainment. As the linen peels away, the host reveals a string of tiny beads, a necklace long dulled but still delicate. The guests murmur appreciatively. Some speculate it was a gift from a loved one, others think it might have been part of a funerary ritual. You recall stories you've heard about Victorians wearing mourning jewelry, sometimes even made from the hair of the deceased, blurring the lines between remembrance and obsession. There's a strange intimacy in holding on to the dead like that, a desire to keep them close. The host's voice rises, describing how the unwrapping parties gave birth to early ideas about archaeology and Egyptology, even if the methods were crude by today's standards. You think of the scientists and enthusiasts who pushed boundaries, fueled by equal parts passion and ego, sometimes oblivious to the cost. You wonder if the mummy, if it could speak, would tell tales of betrayal or gratitude. The crowd's excitement bubbles up again as the host unveils a particularly well-preserved finger bone, thin and fragile as a parchment scroll. A gentleman gasps, reaching out as if to touch it, but the host raises a warning finger. "Handle with care," he says. "These are relics, after all." You smile to yourself, knowing full well some guests would have loved to pocket a fragment as a souvenir. You catch the faintest scent of lavender and old paper drifting from somewhere nearby, comforting against the eerie backdrop. The host leans in, the next linen strip poised in his hand. You feel a mix of awe and unease, a cocktail of emotions that's part of the Victorian charm, part the human fascination with mortality. With a soft sigh, the host begins to peel away. The next layer, and you realize that for all the showmanship, tonight you are part of a long chain of witnesses, each drawn to the story, the mystery, and the undeniable pull of the past. And just like that, the next secret unfolds beneath your eyes. The candlelight flickers gently as the host's knife presses against the delicate bandages, peeling back another veil from the ancient figure before you. You can almost feel the centuries lifting with each strip, as if time itself were unfurling. The room holds a quiet reverence, yet beneath it pulses the thrill of discovery, a heady mixture of respect and spectacle that defined those Victorian unwrapping parties. You remember the faint scent of beeswax and old parchment hanging in the air, like a forgotten library's breath. The host begins to describe the surprising role women played in these events, a fact that often slips under the historical radar. While Victorian society generally confined women to the private sphere, these unwrapping parties became one of the rare occasions where ladies could engage, albeit as spectators, behind the velvet ropes of Egyptomania. You imagine the ladies, faces flushed with excitement and perhaps a touch of scandal, clutching their smelling salts as they watched the mysteries of death peeled away like layers of a particularly creepy onion. The host quips, "You'd think Victorian women were the original true crime fans." You lean in, curious, as he shares a lesser-known anecdote. Some of the earliest female Egyptologists cut their teeth at these gatherings, translating hieroglyphs or cataloguing artifacts between sips of sherry. It's a fascinating twist, showing that even in an era of strict gender roles, curiosity knew no bounds. You wonder if those women ever whispered about their ambitions beneath their lace parasols, dreaming of worlds beyond corsets and crinolines. The host's voice softens as he describes the intricate funerary masks that sometimes emerged from the wrappings, gilded faces frozen in eternal grace or solemnity. One mask, he says, once inspired a wave of mourning jewelry trends, its serene visage replicated in brooches and lockets. You picture Victorian ladies wearing tiny golden faces pinned close to their hearts, a blend of fashion and fascination with death's permanence. It's oddly touching and a little unsettling, like wearing a friend's ghost on your sleeve. You catch a whiff of lavender mixed with the earthy aroma of old wood, and something faintly metallic, perhaps the scent of centuries-old resin used, in embalming. The host smiles knowingly and mentions how these parties sometimes caused mild allergic reactions, a detail that seems to amuse the crowd. You recall your own allergy to dust and pollen, and think about how even now history sometimes hits us in the most physical ways. As the linen slips away further, the host unveils a fragment of a papyrus scroll, its faded ink barely visible, but hinting at prayers or spells meant to guide the deceased safely to the afterlife. You imagine the scribe's hand gliding over the papyrus, crafting words of protection and hope thousands of years ago. They say, the host muses, that these spells were the ancient equivalent of a nightlight. You chuckle softly, picturing a pharaoh too scared of the dark to face the underworld without magical backup. The audience murmurs appreciatively, the tension easing as the stories unfold. You feel the room breathe with a shared reverence and a hint of collective thrill, as if everyone here is complicit in a secret tradition, peeling back layers of history, one fragile linen strip at a time. The host's eyes gleam as he reveals a small, elaborately painted scarab, its surface still glinting faintly under the candlelight. This little fellow, he says, was believed to roll the sun across the sky every day, a symbol of rebirth and regeneration. You imagine the ancient Egyptians watching the dawn with hope, much like you watch the first light of morning creeping through your window. The host winks. Honestly, I bet some of these scarabs had a better commute than we do. As the mummy's form grows more defined beneath the fading wrappings, the host's narration takes on a philosophical tone. He reminds you that while these parties were undeniably a product of their time, they also sparked a wider fascination with Egypt that led to more careful study and preservation. Still, he notes, historians debate how much damage these spectacles caused to invaluable artifacts, and whether the thirst for entertainment sometimes overshadowed genuine respect. You glance around the room, sensing the mix of awe and discomfort settling over the guests. It's a reminder that history isn't just about facts and dates, but about our complicated, often messy relationship with the past. You think about how, even now, we wrestle with how to remember and honor those who came before us. The host's voice softens as he prepares to peel away yet another layer, the knife poised like a brushstroke on a fragile canvas. You feel a gentle hush fall over the room, the moment stretching like a breath held tight between heartbeats. And then, slowly, the next secret slips free into the flickering light. The room grows quieter, the soft rustle of linen seeming to echo louder in the hush. You watch as the host's blade glides carefully over the final layers, like a surgeon unveiling a long-forgotten patient. There's a reverence now, a shift, from spectacle to something more intimate, almost sacred. The flickering candlelight dances across the mummy's exposed features, the delicate bones and dried skin telling stories no book ever could. You lean in, feeling a chill that isn't just from the cool draft sneaking through the cracked window. The host lowers his voice to a near whisper and shares one of the strangest Victorian beliefs about mummies, that touching the skin would grant you mystical powers, or at the very least a bit of their ancient magic. You imagine a dandy in a top hat, slyly reaching out to graze the mummy's wrist, hoping for a lucky charm or perhaps a cure for his perpetual cold. The crowd chuckles quietly, but you can tell some are half serious. The Victorians were endlessly inventive when it came to mixing superstition and science, weren't they? Like using crocodile dung sunscreen, but expecting a flawless tan. You notice the intricate tattoos inked faintly on the mummy's arm, symbols and designs that the host explains were meant to protect the wearer from evil spirits on their journey beyond. You think about how tattoos have come full circle in modern times, from symbols of rebellion to mainstream fashion statements. It's curious to consider that these ancient marks served as armor, while today we often see them as expressions of identity. The host adds with a smirk, "Guess some things never go out of style." As the last bandages fall away, the mummy's face emerges, surprisingly well preserved, with hollow eye sockets that seem to stare right through you. You shiver, not from cold but from the eerie connection to someone who lived thousands of years ago. The host points out a faint smile etched into the dried lips, sparking a debate among historians. Was this an intentional expression or simply the result of the embalming process? The answer remains elusive, and as with many things about mummies, scholars still argue over the tiniest details. You hear a faint cough from a nearby guest, perhaps nervous at the closeness of death itself. You glance around and spot a lady discreetly dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. The host, gently, reminds everyone that beneath the layers of dust and decay lies a person, a soul who once laughed, loved, and feared just like us. It's a sobering thought that tempers the macabre thrill of the evening. The host then reveals a small box tucked beside the mummy's feet, a collection of personal items, including tiny beads, fragments of cloth, and a delicate amulet shaped like a scarab. You're struck by the intimacy of these artifacts, evidence of the personal rituals that bridged life and death. The host muses on how these items were meant to accompany the deceased, providing comfort and protection. You think about the modern equivalents, photographs, keepsakes, or even smartphones, objects meant to hold memory and identity. As the party winds down, the host shares one last curious fact. Victorian mummy unwrapping parties inadvertently contributed to the development of forensic science. By carefully examining mummified remains, early scientists learned about ancient diseases, embalming techniques, and even diet. You find it ironic that what started as morbid entertainment eventually fed into genuine scientific progress. The atmosphere softens as the final candle burns low, casting long shadows that stretch like whispers across the floor. You feel a strange blend of reverence and melancholy, a reminder that history is never just about the past. It lives on in the stories we tell, the objects we preserve, and the mysteries we still seek to unravel. The host's voice lowers further, almost as if coaxing the room to rest. You realize the unwrapping is over, but the journey has only just begun. The stories, the debates, the whispered legends, they all linger in the air, inviting you to explore more, to question, to wonder. You sit back, eyes heavy but mind alight, carrying the echoes of an ancient world into your dreams. The soft hum of a fan mixes with the fading candlelight, and you feel yourself drifting, slowly, gently, into the quiet embrace of night. The room is now bathed in the soft amber glow of dwindling candlelight, the party's earlier excitement having gently faded into a quiet, contemplative stillness. You settle deeper into your chair, the hum of a distant fan a comforting backdrop. As the host's voice takes on a soothing, almost hypnotic tone, this is the final stretch of the evening's journey, a moment to reflect on all you've witnessed. The unraveling of linen, the unfolding of stories wrapped in time. You think back to the strange mix of fascination and respect that defined these Victorian unwrapping parties. They were a bizarre blend of curiosity, entertainment, and scholarship, like binge-watching a historical drama while nursing a cup of chamomile tea. The host reminds you gently that while these events might seem unsettling now, they were part of a broader cultural moment, a way for people to grapple with death, the unknown, and the allure of the exotic. The air feels cooler now, the scents of beeswax and old parchment fading into something softer, like lavender drifting through a quiet room. You imagine the distant desert winds that once stirred the sands around these mummies, the sun setting slowly over ancient temples. It's humbling to realize that these relics have traveled through centuries and continents, surviving wars, curiosity, and time itself, only to end up here, in this softly lit room under your watchful gaze. The host's voice grows slower, more deliberate, as he shares how the legacy of these parties lingers today. Modern Egyptology owes much to the early fascination sparked in Victorian England, even if the methods were crude and the motivations mixed. He mentions ongoing debates among historians about the ethical lines crossed. Was it reverence or exploitation? The answer isn't clear, and maybe that's part of the story's enduring mystery. You feel your eyelids grow heavy, the gentle cadence of the narration weaving a calm blanket around your thoughts. The host's words float softly. We are all connected to the past, not just through artifacts, but through our endless desire to understand, to touch, even briefly, the lives that came before us. It's a thought that settles deep, like a lullaby for the curious soul. Outside, the night deepens, stars blinking slowly through the window's haze. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the fading story, as the host's voice becomes a whisper, the last thread of a tale unraveling into silence. You imagine the mummy finally resting once more beneath layers of time, and yourself drifting gently toward dreams where past and present blur, where history becomes a soft, distant hum, cradling you as you fall asleep. The lights dim, the fans hum a tender companion, and the story fades into the quiet dark. End of script. Sweet dreams.